Do you struggle with bloat and constipation and gas? And do you struggle with a pooch that never goes away no matter how many sit-ups you do? Chances are that you might have diastasis, especially if you're a woman who's had a child. My name is Dr. Connie, and I've been a women's health physical therapist for 2 decades, specializing in pelvic floor work. It's a thing. Many women have different things going on with the pelvic floor and the abdominal wall. Today, I want to talk to you specifically about the diastasis recti. Diastasis recti is a separation of your abdominal muscle, specifically the rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscle, right down the middle, okay? It's called the linea alba, and there is it's a fascial structure, that's connective tissue that connects the left and the right side together. And as we go through hormonal changes with pregnancy and weight gain, as the baby gets bigger, it slowly separates. And after giving birth, we get our bodies back. The abdominal, you think, would come back flat, you should hope, and it does. But it takes a little bit more mindfulness and attention to it. And knowledge is power, because as long as you know it, you can get it back. And sometimes if you don't get it back and if you continue to have that separation, it can lead to hernia, umbilical hernia, that can happen, which can lead to gut dysfunction. It's related. Something that happens in pregnancy, simple separation of the muscles, can lead to systemic issue relating to your gut. If you're a woman like me, like everybody else, we are fanatical about that waistline. We want a nice figure and we want flat belly. Who doesn't, right? And that might be the reason why you keep getting a pooch the more sit-ups that you did. So even though I'm a physical therapist, back then I wasn't practicing when I had my first child 2 decades ago. And I did have the diastasis recti. And I began to have low back pain. I began to have gas and bloating. More importantly, I began to have this pooch I never had. And so I went to check this out, I went to a physical therapist. It was a seminar because I was specializing in women's health. And as I learned further along, I got into the education that diastasis recti is a definitive part of the bigger picture, the pelvic floor issue, all the women's health stuff that we all experience. So today I wanted to talk to you about it because no matter if you've been practicing yoga for a long time, you're a runner, or you love doing HIIT, or you're fit, you might have diastasis recti without realizing that you do, because I can't tell you how many fit yogis and runners and cross trainers, everybody, all women's, all shapes and all sizes, didn't even know that they had diastasis. Once you figure it out, we can pull it back together, and there is a treatment for that to close that gap that's gaping open, causing that gut dysfunction. And that's specifically what I want to do with you today. If you don't know me, I have years of Pilates experience and physical therapy, as well as yoga. So I utilize these things in my practice as well as at my wellness center. So I want to bring them to your attention so you can better engage your pelvic floor and fix your diastasis in a way that's going to be the most impactful for you. But before you do anything rigorous or dynamic in nature, I want you to focus on the foundations with me. So if you have maybe a cushion, like sofa cushion will work, something that has a give, or you have a yoga block, that can work. I have a little exercise P-Volve ball here. You can get a ball at a dollar store, no problem. I found that this helps to activate the core muscles in a way that allows you to pull up the pelvic floor. Here's another thing that I'll say about the pelvic floor muscle is Your core is, or your core includes your pelvic floor muscles. It's got 4 essential muscles. And if you didn't know that, I want you to recognize it so you can better be equipped to activate those muscles, because it's super important when you're doing yoga, Pilates, running, anything. So at the front, the rectus abdominis, I said, diastasis recti is the separation of the rectus abdominis. But below that rectus abdominis is what's called a transversus abdominis muscle on the front side, okay? It's the little tone line that you see just under the rib cage, and it extends down to the top of the pelvis. It's on the side, so you can't really see it. If it's not active, your rib cage underneath will be flared out. Even if you have a 6-pack, the TA is not firing. Or if you have a 6-pack, the rectus is busy firing, but you don't have TA firing. So that's a problem. TA is short for transversus abdominis. That's at the front. And at the back, there's multifidus muscle that really runs along the spine. The spinous process, the pointiness or the boniness of your spine, right along the side. In the deepest layers is the multifidi muscle. And that can be, it's hard to palpate or feel with your hands because your paraspinal muscles will activate, and that's the problem. It's like just like a house, right? You need the foundation to hold you, and it doesn't matter what walls or what interior you have. If you don't have the foundation, it doesn't hold you upright. Just like that, I want you to think about your deep core muscles. The transversus abdominis and multifidi, front and back, are the deepest layer muscles. So you don't really feel it contracting. It's not a vanity metric muscle where you can see it, but it has to fire first before all the other external muscles, okay? Because we've got layers to our muscles. And those two are very important, because if your TA and your multifidi are not firing when you're sitting upright, it doesn't matter how strong your rectus abdominis or your paraspinal muscles are, you don't have the foundation to do yoga, Pilates. Eventually, the house will come tumbling down, okay? Something to keep in mind. So extending our conversation into the core, front, transversus abdominis, back, multifidi. That's not all. Up at the top is the diaphragm. It's part of the respiration muscle. That's why in yoga, it's super important for you to catch your breath. And it's the same thing in Pilates. We have to always match the movement with the breath. It's to activate those muscles. Not only that, the breathing allows us to really calm and connect with our nervous system, right? And so I want that to be said, like the core muscles again, front TA, back multifidi, top is diaphragm, down at the bottom is your pelvic floor. So pelvic floor, I've been, as I said, a women's physical therapist for a long time. That means I do vaginal examinations to make sure I get to the culprit of why you have urinary incontinence and why you have fecal incontinence and why you might have pain with intercourse or burning and whatever issues you might have down there, right? So I know that when women do Kegel, a lot of the time you think you're doing Kegel because doctors just send us off after having babies. Go do Kegels. But guess what? Women are not doing the Kegel. Kegel is being pulled up, and because pelvic floor is one of 4 muscles, part of the core, we have to learn how to activate the core properly. That means you're not pushing down, you're pulling up and in, like sucking up, right? Because if you don't and you're pushing down or bearing down, you're going to end up with prolapse. And yes, I've seen women in their 60s and 70s come to me with their organs coming out of their vajayjays. And by then you have to get the tuck surgery, the vaginal sling procedures, what have you, to pull all that tissue up, back, and pull it up, and that's a surgical process that you don't want to consider. It's scary to think about. Now there's other options for that, like pessaries and such, but those are beyond the scope of this conversation, coming back to why I started this conversation, diastasis recti, is because in order for us to close that gap, we can't be working the rectus pooches, which is the rectus abdominis. I kind of named that muscle that because it causes the pooch to worsen sometimes in our abdomen. So for us to contract it properly, we'll go into learning about what that feels like. So please grab your cushion or the ball or a block, come down on your back. And at first, I'm gonna grab a ball. Gives me cushion. You can place a block between your knees if you want. Flatten the feet down on the mat and your knees are hip width apart, exactly, okay? And I want you to just arch your back and tuck it back and forth. This is called the anterior tilt of your pelvis. And then when you're pushing it back down, flattening the small of your back is called the posterior arch or posterior tilt of your pelvis. So front and back, and if you're like most, we have a natural curvature in our low back, right? So somewhere between the two is your neutral spine, okay? It's where you feel like that is your normal lumbar curvature. Even as I'm lying here, I'm not exaggeratingly putting it down or I'm not arched up. I'm somewhere in the middle. As I say in Pilates practice, there's a spider under the small of your back. You don't want to press and kill that spider. So maintaining that, I want you to take a deep breath in. Okay, in. And exhale, as you do that, I want you to squeeze the knees together and flatten the small of your back. Okay, we'll come back to that spider later. I want you to, this exercise, you're actually squashing that spider. Inhale, tilt up. So you let go of that pressure between your knees. And exhale, you're gonna squeeze that ball, flatten the tummy, as well as the curvature down on the mat. Relax your shoulders, relax your face. Inhale, exhale. The breath is important too. You're not blowing out a candle, but you're fogging a mirror. Getting all that out of your lungs. Inhale. Exhale, squeeze that ball and pull it down. And if you're like most, if you're doing it correctly, you're gonna feel the deepest muscles sort of cinch and feel like you have a tight corset that you're tightening. Inhale and exhale, squeeze that ball. And this time I want you to mindfully bring awareness to your pelvic floor. Inhale, arch. Exhale, flatten, pull up that pelvic floor. We have very little control over the diaphragm, but we have indirect control over the diaphragm through our breath. Exhale, contract. Inhale, release, right? Exhale, back, pull up the pelvic floor. Tighten by flattening your abdomen, flattening the low back into the mat. And back. You have a pretty good picture, right? If this keeps pooching, not doing it correctly, okay? So keeping that ball between your knees, feet are hip width apart, sole of your feet planted on the mat. Really find your mat with your feet. You're gonna inhale to prepare and arch your spine. Exhale, tuck and scoop that spine. Thinking about your spine as a string of pearls and you're lifting one spine up at a time. And you come up to the bridge. Think about the top, right? Your thoracic spine towards your neck. That part coming down first and keeping my pelvis up and tilting my tailbone under to allow all the low back spine to be in contact. As I bring it down, inhaling arch, prepare, exhale, tuck and scoop. Tailbone starts to lift. And then the lumbar, L5, 4, 3, 2, 1, T12, T11, maybe T10 and 9. And from here, it's gonna be T9, T10, T11, L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my tailbone. Inhale. Exhale, tuck and scoop, one spine up at a time, one pearl up at a time. Thinking about that pearl necklace just straightened out, and you're lifting one pearl up and one pearl down at a time, and it takes tremendous amount of awareness. So when you do this time, I want you to really go with the breath. Inhaling to prepare. The full time you're taking all the spine up, tailbone up, all the lumbar and up to the thoracic spine up, you are exhaling. You inhale up here, and then you exhale nice and slow down. Really flattening. You see how flat my belly is? Towards it, there's a concavity in my abdomen if done correctly. Tailbone is the last thing to come out. A lot of the times what you'll see is the tailbone, once you're up here, wants to be the first thing to come down, but that's not what I want. The upper spine, lower spine, all the way down, and then the tailbone comes down. That kind of control is required. And this time when you do it, I want you to bring awareness to your pelvic floor, okay? Inhale to prepare, exhale, tuck and scoop, and really pull in. One spine up at a time, pull in, one spine up at a time. Inhale here, and exhale. Pull up that pelvic floor by squeezing that ball between your knees. When you squeeze that knee, by virtue of your fascial connection, it comes all the way up to your pelvic floor. So this takes a lot of practice. We're gonna just do 2 more. Inhale, exhale, tuck and scoop, and lift, 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 lift. And inhale, exhale, tiny little movements at a time, one spine down at a time. Squeezing that ball, bringing awareness to your pelvic floor. It's a lot, I know, for your mind to handle. That's why you need this time to build the foundation. Exhale, up, 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 up. Squeeze that ball, pull up the pelvic floor, shoulders down, relax your face. Inhale here, exhale, tuck and scoop, and one spine down at a time, pulling up the pelvic floor, breathing, exhale, 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 nice and slow. And it should feel like, ding, I worked my core. That's the feeling that I want you to get. Effectiveness is super important, not just go through the exercise, but I want you to really feel it, because if you don't close the gap between the separation of that linea alba in your abdominal muscle, then it's just gonna stay gaped open. And like I said, eventually you're gonna get a hernia, like I did. And it's not fun when you have gas, bloating, and all of that, right? Something physical can cause systemic issue. And when you have gut dysfunction, guess what? Your immune system is affected too. So this time I want you to, remember I said, hyper arch, flatten, somewhere in the middle is your neutral spine. Keeping that neutral spine, that spider is still there. I want to lift up your right leg up like this, knee bent at 90 degrees, hip at 90 degrees, and then lift up. When you lift up the second leg, it's gonna really challenge you here. Do not arch, do not flatten. I want you to hold that neutral spine. That spider is still alive underneath it, right? Imagine if there is a puddle of cold water down below your feet. We're gonna do what's called a hip arc. Right foot, toes down, and come back. Exhale left, and inhale back. Exhale right, inhale back. Exhale left, inhale back. Exhale right, inhale back. Exhale left, inhale back. And again, keeping this nice and flat.
if it's wanting to gape open and you feel the pooch, you want to even hold it together or keep the ranges smaller, right? Too much of a challenge, all you're doing is ripping that thing open and keeping it open. The gap will not close if you're not mindful about it. You're gonna need surgery, not a fun surgery, trust me. Exhale, and it's considered plastic. I was able to get it done because I had an umbilical hernia that was causing all sorts of problems. Exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and inhale. Woo! Right knee up to your chest, left knee, and breathe. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Right foot down, left foot down, straighten the right leg, straighten the left. Point those toes, feet shoulder width apart. I want you to keep the low back. It might flatten down towards the mat, that's okay. Bring your hands behind your head. You're gonna tuck your chin and you're gonna look down at your belly. Elbows don't come up. We're not doing sit-ups, we're doing really activated sit-ups. So I want you to really be mindful of back of your thighs planted down on the mat. Flattening your core onto the mat. Hands behind your ears, keep the elbows wide. You're gonna exhale up and back. The only caveat is to keep your core nice and flat. Exhale up and inhale back. This is where quality over quantity. 3, exhale, 4. A lot of people want to keep their chin up like this. Not a good thing. You want to tuck your chin, gazing down at your belly, keeping the back of your neck supported and long. 5, 6, 7, and 8. And back. I recommend you do that every single day. Bend your knees. Arms down by your side. Find your feet again. Really root down through your feet. You're going to find the legs, find the feet, ground through the legs, through your feet. Arms, the back of your arms are activated to support you. Pulling the navel to the spine. You're gonna inhale. Exhale, lift your bum. We're not doing string of pearls. Exhale, lower the bum. Nice and slow, keeping this nice flat belly. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Pulling the pelvic floor up and in as you exhale, and then inhale, relax. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Making sure the knees are flaring out. You're not moving side to side, but keep it very precise. Inhale and exhale. Pushing down on the inner arches of your feet helps. Exhale down. Inhale and exhale up. Inhale and exhale down. Very good. Right knee up to your chest. Left knee up to your chest. Take it side to side. Roll onto the right side of the mat and pick yourselves up. And I want you to remember something. This is not something that can be fixed overnight. It takes some time. For those of you active women who are used to working out a lot,
slowing down to do this with me, like what we just did here, and really understanding what that feels like is key to you having longevity and success and seeing some serious results with all the fitness things you do. This may be the reason why your pooch never goes away, okay? So DM me, connect with me. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I have my podcast called Mind Your Health. Love to hear from you about what your thoughts are. See you guys soon.